Are you willing to accept Christ's invitation to know Him more intimately, love Him more intensely, and follow Him more closely, and then go out into the world and live His good news? If you say yes, then you could be the 13th apostle. Join Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey, the odd couple of Catholic radio, as they ride the radio waves 2 by 2 to share the goodness, beauty, and truth of Jesus Christ and His church. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th apostle.
In your mind, combine Jane Goodall, Indiana Jones, your favorite unemployed reference librarian, and make that person a faithful Catholic, and you have the makings of a hero on a hero's journey, and a very unlikely one. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and the true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey with my partner, Dan Duddy. Hey, Danny.
Hey, Tommy. How are you, buddy?
All right. How are you?
Quite well. Quite well.
Right. Well,
Never had a bad day, Tom.
That's the sign. Okay. Sun comes up, taxes are paid, and Danny is quite well.
Amen. Let's go.
All right. So we're doing a first here with this episode. We've done numerous author interviews, and we're doing another one. But this is the first time we're doing a work of fiction. Now, in my view, in my reading of it and research, I'm going to say this is historical fiction, a docudrama. And so we're going to welcome David Pinault. He's an emeritus professor of religious studies at Santa Clara University. He's the author of 3 books published by Ignatius Press: Earth Dragon Run, A Spiritual Entertainment. That's going to be our topic now in our conversation. Next one is Providence Blue, a fantasy quest. And the third is The Crucifix on Mecca's Front Porch, a Christian's companion for the study of Islam. That's the one that intrigues me the most. Welcome to the 13th Apostle, David Pinault.
Thank you so much, Tom and Dan. It's an honor to be here with you.
Welcome, David. Thank you.
Honor's ours. It's really looking forward to it. So, do you think I have a good idea? I mean, this is the conclusion that I drew. This is the figure that I had in my head. I was combining these characters: Jane Goodall, right, working with the gorillas in the wild. Everybody knows Indiana Jones, reference librarian who happens to be unemployed. Now he's unemployed for a good reason, and I see so many threads here, which is probably what you want to hear. That there's a good logic and flow to your story. And that's what it is. It's a story. It's not a typical book where we can take a chapter and explore that, a book of dogma or somebody's faith experience. This is a narrative. This is a story as ancient as human history. So do I have our protagonist, Daniel Quirk? Do I have some idea of him with that combination?
Yes, I think you do. And I'll just add to that, Tom, and thank you for that intro. What I would add to what you just said, yes, there's definitely the jungle component, working with animals in the forest. There's definitely the Indiana Jones adventure element. And he is also a very suddenly unemployed, reclusive reference librarian. And what I would add to that is just that, especially at the beginning of the story, this is an individual, Danny Quirk, that's his name, who is very, very solitary, doesn't have much confidence. He's kind of diffident and very, very shy about interacting with the world, and also very sort of on again, off again about his own Catholic faith. And when he finds himself unemployed, he has to scramble to figure out what he's going to do with his. And in that sense, I'd say he's a bit of a ragtag stumble bum. I think I can say that about myself at very frequent intervals. And what I try to do is to create characters in this story that people can involve themselves with. In other words, there's a great deal of factual data and historical background in my novel, Earth Dragon Run. But what I try to do is to maximize the accessibility of the story by creating fictional characters that hopefully will get readers involved to the point that readers care about these characters and what happens to them. Because in fact, what's going to happen to Danny and to various people that he meets in the story is they're going to become involved in what I would call a faith journey in which they are challenged to grow vocationally and especially spiritually.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is so often we're challenged to grow. We're put in precarious situations. Either we've put ourselves in those situations for our faults, our most grievous faults, or somebody puts us in those situations, or the environment is created where that's the place to go. It's like we're being led down the primrose path, and here's your opportunity. You can stop at that portal, or you can go through it. And like to talk about that, why this, how is it possible that the way we describe this Danny Quirk, that he would even consider, let alone do it?
Yes, I would say that at the beginning of the story, when Danny suddenly loses his job, he's in a position where he has, without being fully aware of it, a great deal of energy that he needs to put into something meaningful. And he casts about trying to figure out what that is. And when he becomes unemployed, the one point of continuity that he has with his past life is he's been volunteering at a rescue center for dogs, stray animals. And so, on impulse, after a kind of flash visit to a church, he hasn't been to mass in a while. After all that, he decides, after looking online, he finds a position as a volunteer at a rescue center for wildlife in South Africa. And he's at that point in his life where he's single, he's unattached, he's suddenly lost his job. And so he says, well, the heck with it. I'm going to do that. And he finds actually living in a kind of bunkhouse with a bunch of other volunteers from all over the world is quite a challenge. There are many things that are very difficult for him. But in the process, he meets this character, a young woman from China, from Hong Kong specifically, Zhang Mini Meishing. He's someone who is absolutely devoted to a particular species of wildlife known as a pangolin. Not penguin, by the way, but pangolin. Pangolins also known as scaly anteaters, and they are the most heavily trafficked mammal in the world. And here we get to one of the main themes of the story. They're heavily trafficked because of the fact that in China, it's believed that the pangolins' scales, their armor, and their flesh can be used to cure all kinds of ailments and diseases. By the way, that's largely bogus, but nonetheless, there's a huge industry. And so what happens, in fact, is that in China itself, the pangolins have become almost completely extinct. And so what I found in my own volunteer experience off and on over the last 20 years, because I myself have done volunteer work at rescue centers in both Africa and Asia, and that throughout the continents of Asia and Africa, the main market for animal trafficking throughout those continents is communist China. And again, what I saw is that at work, Chinese agents who are facilitating that trafficking. And I use that as a motif to talk about the profoundly corrupting influence of the Chinese Communist Party, both within China and then also abroad in Southeast Asia and in Africa and elsewhere.
Well, China figures large in this story.
Yes.
And I know that what you reference, it's like making a deal with the devil. It seems, which has been pretty well known over the last, I don't know, maybe at least 20 years with their Belt and Road Initiative.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things that I kept thinking as you were talking about, or as the story was unfolding and what China was doing. And in like you referred to how they wanted the pangolin for medicinal purposes that is largely bogus. This is the deal they make. You give us your resources. In this case, we're talking about an animal, but and then we'll help you out financially but that's it's not really a good deal because so often the nations can't pay back the loans, and so because it's complicated. But meanwhile, China has devastated a lot of the natural resources, and that comes out pretty clear in your story.
Yes, yes. And in fact, I had the experience, for example, in South Africa, where there is so much wildlife trafficking that takes place. And basically what happens is the Chinese businessmen and agents, they don't go into the bush, into the jungle themselves. They'll pay people a couple of dollars to go and capture the animals for them. Forests get devastated. And what happens is illegal snares are laid, and basically strangulation wires. And snaring is illegal in South Africa. And Jody, my wife, and I were involved in a number of anti-poaching patrols, removing snares. It's a slow and difficult business. And what we found is that I'll never forget this. There are actually now Chinese businesses that are set up throughout sub-Saharan Africa, and you can go into these Chinese pharmacies, for example, where they're selling quote unquote medicine that consists of a kind of unguent that's made from animal body parts, such as the penguins. And as one local person said to me with considerable bitterness, the Chinese are taking our animals, trafficking them, smuggling them, and then selling them back to us as paste. It's tragic.
Wow.
Oh.
And what I try to do in the novel is to use that, the whole business of animal trafficking, as a kind of entry point into a whole number of other issues that I explore in the story. Because in fact, the Chinese Communist Party is also involved in many, many parts of the world, especially in Southeast Asia, with other issues as well, such as human trafficking, such as cyber scam operations, and also forced medical organ harvesting as well, and often inflicted on political prisoners in China. So the novel explores that as well.
David, I want to jump in. I want to tell you that I am personally inspired on multiple levels from what you have written. Firstly, I'm inspired by the fact that you have written a novel, fictional characters that are just so real at the same time and relatable. I find myself being fictional sometimes, driving through red lights, imagining myself doing heroic things. And I am 70 years old myself. Danny Quirk is very relatable and very inspiring because you're taking a very shy, behind the scenes man and you're bringing this character like, gosh, into China. He's doing the heroic, prototypical stuff of the Indiana Jones, but he's also the steward of a young woman, right? And he stepped in all while being his true self. So he's celebrating his very own creation by looking inside and finding this excitement, this ball of energy that is, I think, is very inspiring to our readers, not only our older people like myself, but younger readers, of course, are one day going to be Danny Quirk, right? We're all Danny Quirk. We all have our shyness. We all have our things that we're afraid to jump out from it. And I want to congratulate you on that. What about the component of the power of the past that comes through your book and how Danny Quirk, kind of brings the past forward with strength?
Yeah, thank you first of all, for what you said. In a sense, part of what I wanted to explore in the novel is this whole notion of when we feel powerless and when we feel kind of spent and feeling like, maybe our life is over, what I think God calls us to do is to realize that we've been placed here on earth on assignment. We no matter what age we are, no matter what our energy level is, God wants us to exert ourselves. Part of what Danny Quirk has to discover is, okay, now by temperament, he's reclusive. I mean, he's a college campus reference librarian by trade. He's most comfortable being by himself, but he challenges himself. And at the same time, to bring up what you said about the past, he is someone who, as an avid reader and an amateur student of archaeology and history, in his little one-bedroom apartment. He's surrounded by a couple of thousand books. And as a scholar myself, I can relate to that. Anyways, so he has these really romantic visions, especially at the beginning of the story, where he sort of dimly senses his own potential. He's very much attracted to traditional forms of the Catholic faith. He is someone who, and here I draw on personal experience, he is someone who was an altar boy back when the Mass was still said in Latin. And he feels that there's a lot of richness to the Catholic tradition. There's a lot worth defending in what I think we can still refer to as the free world and the notion of Catholic Christian civilization. And he discovers, as he ventures out into the larger world and he confronts the Chinese Communist Party, he begins to realize that all of these things that have been in his past as his heritage are actually under threat, partly from indifference, materialism, and secularism, infinite distractions of our phones, all of that as a kind of cacophony in his own background in our culture, but also under threat from the relentless so-called scientific atheism officially propounded by the Chinese Communist Party. And part of what goes on in the novel is he, together with the various friends he gradually makes in the course of the novel, you know, they come together as a group to be able to work to try to counter the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful too how so many of our, I'll just call them parish Catholics, you know, so many of our people who don't travel much further than 15, 20 miles from their church on a regular basis, you know, in that, you know, Sunday to Sunday grind of their daily life, you know,
Yeah.
what you're doing, I think, with our universal church, the Catholic Church, I think you're bringing to them, you know, the rest of the world, you know, the whole scene by bringing us into China. What do you think that does for our home-based, you know, parishioners by doing so? You know, I have an opinion on that, but go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think part of what it does is it helps us to realize what a precious gift it is that we have free access to celebration of daily Mass. That is something that people are not easily able to do in many parts of the world, including first and foremost in communist China. One of the most inspirational events in my own life that is directly reflected in the novel is the fact that a few years ago, Jody, my wife, and I had the great privilege of being in Hong Kong and being invited to dinner with and interviewing His Eminence Cardinal Joseph Zen. And he actually inspired the creation of one of the characters in the novel. And for listeners who are not familiar with him, Cardinal Joseph Zen, I would say, is the foremost opponent of the Chinese Communist Party in Southeast Asia. He's someone who was born in China during the Japanese occupation. Okay, he fled as a young man from China to Hong Kong, British Hong Kong, when Mao Zedong came to power in the late 1940s. And then he volunteered to go back to China as a missionary priest during the time of Mao's Cultural Revolution. And phenomenal courage. And he is someone who, resident in Hong Kong, he has spoken up fearlessly against the communist government that dominates Hong Kong today after the British handover in 1997. And he has also been outspoken in appearing on behalf of the dissident known as Jimmy Lai. I don't know if you've heard of Jimmy Lai, but he is a Catholic from China. He moved to Hong Kong as a young man, founded a newspaper that spoke out fearlessly on behalf of democracy in Hong Kong. And he was arrested by the Chinese Communist Party, and he's been in solitary confinement for some time. Anyways, Cardinal Zen has been appearing at the courthouse in the show of solidarity. Cardinal Zen is now in his 90s, but that has not stopped him. And he is someone who I pay homage to in the form of a fictional character in the story. And just to circle back to what you said before, that when you get a small taste of the courage of such people, the persecution that they have weathered and stood up to, you begin to realize, my goodness, what we have here in this country is such a treasure. And what we should be doing is not only attending Mass faithfully, but realizing, God, this is a source of spiritual strength. And armed with this strength that Christ gives us through the Mass, through the Eucharist, we need to find the courage to go out in the world and engage with such issues.
Key word, you hit it. I'm going to turn over to Tom. It facilitates courage in us, doesn't it? It calls us out. It touches our heart and pulls us out. It extracts courage. Good. Thank you, David. Go ahead, Tom.
So David, tell our audience why Danny Quirk was unemployed. Speaking of heroism and courage.
Yes, exactly. Here we get into issues of wokeness and political correctness. What I'll just say very, very briefly is that at the very beginning of the novel, he's someone who he is very restless as he has to attend these tedious, endless faculty staff meetings where people drone on and on about issues of proper nomenclature and so forth, and how we deal with diversity, equity, inclusion, all the rest of that. And what he does is he winds up going to St. Louis, Missouri, to attend essentially a rosary vigil, trying to defend a statue of St. Louis from these woke Antifa vandals who basically want to desecrate such statues. Turns out it gets videotaped, and so you have a scene at the beginning of the story where he gets into big trouble for that, and he's told, if you want to come back to the job, you are going to have to attend basically wokeness seminars, and faced with that, he realized, I better start to think of some alternatives.
Mm-hmm. I like this guy, Danny Quirk.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've thought about this question numerous times. How much of David Pinault, the author, is in this book? Seems like there's a strong thread in here.
Yeah, good question, Tom. Let's go, Dave. Let's go.
Okay, yeah. And I would say briefly, quite a lot. And I want to emphasize that I'm a scholar, by trade. And that means that I am comfortable with a lot of quiet, a lot of solitude. My professional background is as a scholar and as a professor, not as a librarian. But nonetheless, temperamentally, that's in there. And in terms of the experiences that I put Danny Quirk through, let's just say that all of those scenarios, that there are a lot. Readers will find that there are many different episodes in different parts of the world, set in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Cambodia, South Africa, San Francisco. And I've worked and volunteered, done work as a freelance journalist in all of those places. So in each case, I draw on personal experience very much. Of course, there's a certain amount of fictionalizing that has to go on, But yes, I would say there's a fair amount of Dave Pinault in there.
I thought so.
Had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short outside the intellectual cognitive domain, David. You're very affective, inspiring, and motivational. I must tell you that. You are a real gift and a real treat to meet and talk to here today. Tell us real quick, Tom. I don't know how much we have left. You're in the studio there. We have a couple minutes?
A couple of fast minutes.
David, it's never too late to renew our Catholic faith. Can we put that into what do you mean by that in a fast minute? It's never too late to renew our Catholic faith.
Yes. Excellent question. Part of what I convey in the novel is Danny, at the start of the novel, he's just turning 70, he's feeling old, he's feeling tired, and there's this scene in the Catholic church that he goes to in San Francisco where, he feels that the faith, that the icons and the art that he sees, is not speaking to him enough. And by taking a chance, by stepping outside himself and allowing himself to engage with people in the world in unfamiliar settings, what he rediscovers is something that Christ himself tells us in the Gospels: wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. In other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, we have the opportunity to be Christ's hands in this world. And that's when, when I work with skeptical, agnostic, young undergraduates, and they say, well, where do we find God's presence? And I tell them, get involved in the world and take a look at the people around you. You're going to see reflections of Christ all around us. And that's part of the discovery that Danny makes, I think, in Earth Dragon Run.
That's inspiring.
And,
very inspiring.
There's no doubt that Jesus is with us in this conversation. As interesting as I found Danny Quirk, and as much time as I was spent with him in this approximate 30 minutes, I have found you more interesting. I found you inspiring. I'm just about ready to turn 70, and I love the life of books, but I love. I mean, Indiana Jones was a professor, so
Yes.
there's so much here. There's a little bit of Don Quixote. There's poverty of spirit, where you total trust the Lord. Danny Quirk had to totally trust the Lord to go out and do this unbelievable work. So, thank you for bringing this book to us and bringing yourself to our audience.
I have to tell our audience, you have an amazing energy, David, and they really need to open up this book and come to know you through your characters. You've been a real treat.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Real quick, off topic, Dan, does David remind you of anyone?
I don't know.
Someone who is very near and dear to us, but
you put me on the spot.
Okay, I'll tell you off the air. I'll tell you off the air.
Well, near and dear is Deacon Chuck.
No. Don't reach.
Okay. All right.
This is special, but when I tell you afterwards, and David, we'll send you a note afterwards to explain why I'm saying this, but it's very touching, and you'll know why soon. So,
okay.
Thank you again, David. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you actually remind me of your son Kevin, Tom, but I know that's not what you're getting at.
That's behavior. That's
but
not
I'm looking at him now.
Kevin's mustache is a lot bigger.
Oh yeah, he's got a great mustache, David. Yeah. All
right. What's coming up next, Danny?
All right, stay tuned, folks, for The Angelus and your prayer intentions.
WQPHradio.org. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support. Start up the new year with a great episode and a wonderful guest. Thank you, David Pinault, for your time.
Thank you so much, Tom and Dan. Really a pleasure.
Likewise, back at you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?